Begin quote. Now, even as a person who knows very little about modern farming, I know crops can strip the soil of nutrients. And in fact, the problem is about 100 times more complicated than that. Balancing nutrients with organic or synthetic fertilizers and resulting pollution, soil erosion, etc., which I learned by doing only the most rudimentary research. So I wrote a message to the Tumblr mentioning a few of these things. Stuff that seemed like it should be particularly interesting to vegans, as it was to me. Given the complications they present to our hope of a vegan world, and how I found this information in less than 5 minutes of basic Googling, this is the part that perhaps came off as a little shirty. Anyway, when the owner of the Tumblr replied, they basically said, well, I'm not going to do 5 minutes of research for every question I get, asshole. Which, okay, the asshole part is fair enough. But this is the attitude in online vegan activism, quote unquote activism, that I seriously cannot relate to at all. Wouldn't you want to learn more about this when someone brought it to your attention? Particularly before you speak on something you have zero knowledge of? This didn't pique your curiosity at all as a vegan? I think activism implies a certain responsibility to be aware of and educate yourself on the issues you're acting on, particularly when you've got an audience. So many of these lifestyle blogs or channels claim to want a more vegan world, but ignore or even openly dismiss the practical concerns or strategy of making that happen beyond just making veganism look cool on Instagram. So close quote, that's the end of Alexa's message, or that's the end of my reading it. So many vegans, as Alexa complains, just have no way to cope with the reality of agriculture, including plant agriculture. And you find this in the hysteria over palm oil. Now, palm oil is a crop. Okay, let's get real. Vegans like to eat mangoes. Do you think that a mango plantation is less genocidal to the wild animals that live there than a palm oil plantation? Now, I mean, palm oil, okay, it happens to be orangutans are the among the animals who are being destroyed by palm oil plantations. Well, you can literally replace the palm oil with mango. You could have mango plantations in the same climate, in basically the same soil conditions. I don't know if they'd be perfect, but it's all right. And you're still killing the orangutans, But vegans look at this, and they're so unprepared to deal with these issues that they think the problem is palm oil, and they have to ban palm oil or even say that palm oil is not vegan. Now, some of the most respected vegan activists, some of the most respected vegan YouTubers, people on YouTube who are considered highly intelligent, have said this, and it's shockingly stupid. Why would you blame palm oil rather than any other crop? And again, with this specific example, if you're talking about palm oil in Malaysia, we grow palm oil in Thailand also. Let's stick with Thailand because I've lived in Thailand so much. If I buy the property that's currently growing palm oil and I change to another crop, it doesn't help any of the animals. Even if we're talking about the original forest being purchased, okay, so you have intact old growth forest, and there are some monkeys living there, maybe there are some wild elephants living there, but there may be orangutans, whatever species you're interested in. Okay, you have a patch of wild forest. It doesn't matter if I cut it down to grow palm oil or if I cut it down to grow mangoes. Many vegans, by the way, have been horrified by visiting durian farms. Durian farming involves killing animals and sometimes people. You may not believe me on that, but I've been to durian farms. Durian, is it's a fancy crop, as farmers like to say. Every durian farm has a mean old man with a shotgun or a rifle or a machine gun sitting there watching at all times. And he will be having to shoot feral pigs that come to steal the durians. Pigs can smell durians just as well as humans can. He may have to shoot monkeys that come to steal the durians. Again, monkeys want to climb up the tree and eat the crops. And above all else, he's there to shoot people. In a country like Laos, there was one durian farm by the side of the road, so people could access it. It wasn't isolated in the mountains or something. And they always had to have an armed guard because durians are worth money. If one guy rolls up in a truck with a machete and, hacks down a bunch of durians and drives away, that's a huge loss to the farmer. So he has armed guards. And they all get shot. And this is durian farming. This is the celebrated luxury fruit of many vegans. Ironically, by the way, I've never understood this. High-carb, low-fat vegans all advertise durian. Durian is a high-fat food. It's one of the few fruits that is astoundingly high in fat. You can really gain weight eating durian. But anyway, look, that's farming. Farming is created and sustained by acts of violence. I've said that in the YouTube channel before. You are constantly engaged in low-level violence to prevent the land from returning to the state of being a forest or a jungle or whatever it naturally would be if you weren't farming those crops there. It takes violence to create the farm in the first place, and you will indeed have violence against other animals and to some extent against other human beings in the way I've described. So what is the solution? The solution is not to think of veganism as being, I rescue my dog, I rescue my cat, now I want to rescue the cows, and then to have an incoherent ersatz approach to trying to ban and cope with banning, particular crops like, palm oil. It just makes no sense. What you have to recognize is, look, for animals, not for human use, we need to have a line on the map and say, inside this little square that human beings have drawn on the map, that land exists for the trees, for the monkeys, for the elephants, for the wild dogs, for the wild cats. This is, in effect, not our land. It's not for us. You can let some scientists go in with a video camera once in a while or whatever, but the point is, this is not a jungle being created for tourism. It's not being created for sports. It's not being created for kayaking. That you have habitat conservation that exists for the reason of habitat conservation, period. That is its whole purpose. That's the only thing that will help those orangutans. Doesn't you stop eating palm oil? So what? Seriously, how could anyone be so stupid as to imagine that if they use a different type of cooking oil instead of palm oil, that will save the lives of orangutans? Absolutely the only thing you can do to save those orangutans. Well, okay, there are two things. One, you can have zoo programs. You can have captive breeding programs just to try to stop them from going extinct. Obviously, I've mentioned that in my channel before, and a couple of vegans have attacked me. Obviously, when the alternative is extinction, we have to have, zoo-like captive breeding programs, because sometimes the only alternative is to kill the animals or let them die, which is even worse. So, of course, as a vegan, I'm a critic of zoos, and I'm a critic of all these things. You talk to anyone who's done real charity work related to endangered species, they criticize zoos, but they also rely on them. It's that or extinction for many species. So yeah, zoos are morally murky, a lot of gray areas, but sure, got to work with them. That's thing one. And in the short term, you can take an orangutan and put him in a captive breeding program, try to stop them from going extinct. But thing two is habitat conservation. That's it. That's the only solution, is to have land that is absolutely reserved for non-human use, where the trees are not being grown to be turned into paper, not now, not ever. That it's not lumber. It doesn't exist to make furniture. The trees exist just to be trees, where the animals don't exist to entertain us. They're not there to be pretty for us. The orangutans are not there to put on a show, where you have some land reserved so that those animals can exist. Now, ultimately, this is, again, you guys already know, I'm not an anarchist. The only way you can achieve this is through cooperation with governments in the modern world, in reality. In very, very few cases, habitat conservation comes about because of a multimillionaire. Somebody like Bill Gates, someone with millions and millions of dollars, can directly do the work that governments do, buy a huge area of land and really operate it in a habitat conservation way. That is possible. But for most countries around the world, what we absolutely need are governments and international agreements to put pressure on governments to have real habitat conservation. I think the fundamental stupidity that's being addressed here by Alexa is really the paucity of this habitat conservation approach in veganism today. And I've made videos in the past talking about that. It hasn't always been this way. Things have changed a lot since the year 2000. People have just forgotten about this. And you know what? I don't know why, because many of the things we face in veganism are hopeless. There are many of these problems when you look at them and you think, God, this is never going to change, or it's never going to change in my lifetime, or I'm never going to see the outcomes of this. But habitat conservation is quick. It is quick and dirty. You can really rapidly draw some lines on a map, and then the government or a charity employs some men with guns to patrol that area, to make sure there isn't illegal logging, to make sure there isn't illegal poaching. That stuff is easier than ever now because of video cameras, digital video cameras. You set up a bunch of hidden cameras in the forest you're trying to preserve. Makes it much, much easier to enforce those regulations and to put people in prison when they come and illegally chop down lumber or illegally kill animals. That is it. Quick, overnight, fast. You can have a profound impact on the world's ecology and on the lives of animals. You can preserve, a place where any of these species really have a chance to thrive, and not to thrive as an ornament to human civilization, not to be a toy sleeping on a couch, watching television in a language it can never understand, not an animal that it's had its will broken, its testicles chopped off, an animal with its fangs and claws removed. Sickening to me. But, this to me is the contrast between myself and I would say the majority of vegans in 2016. And I don't know. I mean, am I still going to be in the minority 10 years from now, 20 years from now? I don't know.